Hello, I'm Dahl Russell. Today I'm going to be talking about a modern work of music by a living composer in his 40s, Regis Campo, or Regis Campo if you want to Americanize it, born in 1968. He has already risen to a level of such recognition that his biography appears online, listed in Wikipedia, in IMDb for his film scores. He's listed amongst the prestigious publisher Henri Lemoine. He is on a singer's song lyric site and other websites as well, including a site of notable people in the news. One of the ironies of trying to do biographical research on living composers in this super saturated social media culture is that it can be very difficult to find out about the childhoods of people, living people who were born within the social media explosion. The online presence of performers and their websites can be very sanitized and curated to the point that there's little or no mention of family, of schools, or anything until they start having significant professional accomplishments. I found this to be true for Mr. Campo, but it's very common across the board with living artists. Perhaps historians writing in the next generation will have a better overview of the importance of childhood events in the lives of today's living composers. So I'll give you some highlights of what I have unearthed about his accomplishments. He was born in Marseille in 1968. He took composition lessons before enrolling at the Paris Conservatoire. He finished with the first prize in composition in 1995 at the age of 27. In 1992, he studied composition with Edison Denisov, who deemed him one of the most gifted composers of his generation. He had a residency at the Via Medici, that is the home of the Académie de France in Rome, and currently teaches composition at the National Conservatory of the Marseille region. He has numerous international awards, and he is regularly invited to join the juries of international competitions. He says that his primary influences, are Stravinsky, Mozart, and Rameau, and secondary influences Messiaen, Lutoslawski, and Mahler. That diversity of inspiration is something that I feel you can hear in his music. His writing style is often described as playful, and it's apt, and it's mentioned, the energy is mentioned, and it diverges from quite a bit of the modern late 20th century music. It is said that his works put an accent on melodic invention and lively tempi. Now, a word about a lot of modern music. Many works of modern music today not only deconstruct melody, but many rely on a strict and calculated disregard of recognizable musicality. Some of these works convert chords into numbers and rely on a solely mathematical formula. Others evolve from a pulse. My personal impression is that many of these works require a great investment from the listener to delve into something really completely foreign that has as a core intention a specific lack of wanting to please an audience with anything familiar. Because of this, these works have no melody, but they also lack other things that we love about more familiar music, such as emotional threads, a broad palette of sound, tonal use of the orchestral instruments, humor, spirit, and even a sense of magic. Fortunately, Campo's music is different from those. Campo mines many of the different thoughts that circulate in contemporary music, modern concert music, but also more popular forms. He has piano works that are very much like New Age music, kind of circular and meditative and repetitive. His chamber work called Pop Art and another one called Anima remind me of the experimentation of Satie and the playfulness of Poulenc. He also kind of deconstructs the way the instruments are used and includes a definite influence of jazz. So here again, we have that playfulness that we were talking about. And his world, his musical world, has variety, and it is perhaps that variety that helps to give his orchestral music such a broad scope of sound, and consequently a very full use of the orchestra. And he has a prodigious output, recognized by those in his field. Now, that's not going to say that it's not challenging. Any music that's new to you, even an older work that you haven't heard before, can be challenging because it's unfamiliar. So what you can listen for in this piece is for that broad orchestral scope, for a sparkle, a sense of magic, and if you're really engaged with it, you can feel the emotional through line. So if you want to find a place to, how do I think about this before I start listening to it? A good starting point for you is to think of the music of John Williams, like Star Wars music. Williams' music has a grandeur, and it has that big orchestral scope that kind of takes you away into the cosmos. It also has a sense of whimsy and magic. It just happened that the day before I gave this speech, NPR happened to have a story about how Williams' outer space music was actually largely influenced by a work by Gustav Holst called The Planets. So that Holst's work called The Planets has actually influenced almost all the music that we think of as sounding like outer space. Campos's work today kind of takes off. If Williams was influenced by Holst, Campos has that kind of influence of some of Williams' sound. Now, as soon as I say that, you need to know both Holst and Williams had kind of these mushy, romantic melody themes. Campos' piece does not have that. But if you think of what's going on behind and around that melody, that's where Campos's music resides, and that's where it takes off, and he goes further out into the mysteries and into the surprise and the sense of flight and the majesty and, yes, the magic. I think you will definitely feel the sense of being immersed in deep space as you listen to this piece. The piece that I'm speaking about is called Ouverture en forme d'étoile, overture in the form of stars, or in the shape of stars. Now, as a point of interest, we want to remember that there is a work by Eric Satie called Trois morceaux en forme de poire, 3 pieces in the shape of a pear. And this fit with Satie's sense of the absurd. But so this title has a nod towards Satie in this title. Also, some modern composers have taken things like that as a challenge and as a map, as it were. And actually, they have composed a piece so that as you look at it on the piano score or the orchestral score, it's actually in the shape of a pear. Or the melodic line might form the outline of a pear. Or a star. So there's that thought, that kind of thought going on in much of modern music that was influenced by Satie. But that's just a trace mention within this work. Another touchstone to this work for you as you try to listen to it and grasp onto something that's familiar to you, could be the music of Wagner or Mahler. And remember, he did say that Mahler is one of his influences. They both had a very large orchestral sound, and Wagner especially has a very long through line. He has a melody, but sometimes it starts in this half hour and ends in that half hour before it finally reaches a resolution. So there's that kind of extended musical thread. This piece by Campos has this kind of similarity. There's a lot going on, but you have to think of yourself as traveling through it and not get that attached to what's going on around you. And that way, I feel that this piece is like traveling on a spaceship. Or for more identifiable purposes, let's say traveling on an airplane, where you, sitting in your seat in the audience or on the airplane, are the main thread of the musical voyage. You're the main thread. Now, there's a lot that will happen inside the plane. Trace conversations, people going by, and there are things going on outside the plane. There are clouds and rain and rays of sun and perhaps shooting stars. You will definitely hear a lot of shooting stars in this piece. But the main trajectory of the piece, you yourself sitting on the plane, is basically unchanged by all of these things. You still are steadily traveling through the piece. In this way, if you immerse yourself in this piece of music, you will hear all of these things going on around you. But there you are, buckled in to your audience seat, and the music flows around you. And in a way, kind of like being in a planetarium. The music flows around you while you sit within this one purpose, which is the travel of the piece of music. So allow yourself to sit inside the music. I hope that helps give you a window into this new work by Regis Campo, or Regis Campo. And thank you, and I hope you enjoy it.